Evening, everybody. Excited to be here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. When I was 4 years old, my mom almost died. This is my mom and dad. I was born in Philadelphia, middle-class family. He was a businessman, she was a writer. And we moved, there we go, Philadelphia Inquirer. So we moved into this house, drab gray house, to get closer to his new job. And we moved into the dead of winter. What we didn't know was the gas company had installed a carbon monoxide leaking furnace. Energy efficient house, we all start getting a little sick. New Year's Day, 1980, my mom walks across the bedroom. She collapses unconscious on the floor. Take her to the hospital, and after a long series of blood tests, they find massive amounts of carboxyhemoglobin in her bloodstream. So my dad is actually the one that finds the heater. He rips it out, throws it on the curb. The gas company had come twice and said everything was completely fine. We bounce back. My health bounces back. My dad bounces back. But my mom is never the same. Her immune system is irreparably damaged from this. And I watch her as a little child go from this perfect, healthy, vibrant mom to an invalid, allergic to the world, just shut down. Anything chemical from this point on would make her sick. The ink from books would make her sick. Car fumes would make her sick. Perfume, soap. We prepared a special containment room for her where everything was covered in tinfoil. Her clothes were washed in baking soda 20 times. Just a weird, weird life. She saw doctor after doctor, and they just said, you have to avoid exposure to these chemicals. So I was thrust into a caregiver role very early on. Only child, family planning stopped immediately after the accident. And I was that good kid playing piano in church every Sunday. And as you can see here, my parents used a cereal bowl to cut my hair, legitimately. So I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't curse. I wanted to be a doctor when I was growing up so that I could help people just like mom. Hold that applause. Then 18 in New York City happened, okay? So I had this moment. I woke up at 18. I'm like, now it's my turn. No more playing by the rules. I am going to become rich and famous by becoming a rock star. So I join a band. I grow my hair down to my shoulders. I move to New York City on my own. The band breaks up 2 months later because we hated each other. But I realized that, so I enroll in NYU. But I'm living off campus, and I realized that if one wanted to exercise a rebellion, you could do this in style in New York City by becoming a nightclub promoter. See, there is an actual job where you can get paid to drink alcohol for free in public. And you drink for free, all your friends drink for free, and all you have to do is get the right people inside the right clubs, and then you could just charge them astronomical amounts for alcohol. So at 19 years old, I become a club promoter, 2 years before I'm even allowed to be inside the club. I spend the next 10 years of my life drinking my way through 40 nightclubs. Here's a picture of my life 10 years later at 28. And what's so sad about this picture is if you notice here, I'm pretentiously holding out my Rolex watch. So some club photographer notices I have an expensive watch. This is what I think is important at the time. Now, I wound up getting a degree from NYU, but wasn't really a good student, kind of a C- student, because I'm selling $1,000 bottles of Cristal, okay? I'm the guy on the top of the DJ booth spraying champagne over the crowd. So this is around 10 o'clock. Around midnight, it got a little darker. Okay, this guy came out. So I'd picked up every vice that you would imagine might come with the territory after 10 years. Serious cocaine problems, serious ecstasy, MDMA, drinking, gambling, pornography, strip clubs. Like, you name it short of heroin, and I was doing it. And thankfully, I come to my senses, because you wouldn't invite this guy to speak at Common Reads. So I have this cathartic moment at 28 where I realize I'm the worst person I know. I have made a mess of my life. I am spiritually bankrupt. I'm morally bankrupt. All of the markers of success that I'd collected it left me really unhappy. My girlfriend was on the cover of fashion magazines. I drove the stupid BMW. I had the Rolex. I had a grand piano in my New York City apartment. I had a Labrador Retriever. Like, what more could you want? And I was miserable. I was a hedonist. And I began to re-explore a very lost faith and a very lost morality and ask myself the question, what would the opposite of my life look like? So what would the opposite of the sycophant, hedonist, degenerate look like? So I get the idea that I'm going to apply to the famous humanitarian organizations I'd vaguely heard of over the years, and I'm going to do 1 year of humanitarian service, almost a tithe for the 10 years that I'd wasted. So I applied to the Red Cross, to Oxfam, like, you know where this is going to end. I'm denied by every single organization because, of course, they're serious people, and I'm some club rat. Finally, one organization writes me back and says if I'm willing to go live in post-war Liberia and pay them $500 a month, I can volunteer. So I'm like, this is really opposite. This is amazing. So I dust off my journalism degree from NYU, and I'm like, I'm going to be a photojournalist. And I'm going to be in post-war Liberia, and I'm going to tell stories and take pictures of your amazing humanitarian work, and hopefully you can use those stories and images to raise money. So they take me on. I go in with 14,000 United Nations peacekeepers. This is the largest force ever deployed in the history of the world at this time, of peacekeepers. And that's me with my cameras and my another bad haircut. And I'm going to be embedding with a group of doctors and surgeons on a 522-foot hospital ship. Mercy Ships is an organization out of Texas. They've spent, when I walked up the gangway of the ship, they spent 25 years sailing this hospital up and down the coast of Africa, bringing the very best doctors and surgeons from 40 different countries to people who couldn't afford access to medical care. So I lived in 125 square feet with 2 roommates that worked in the engine room. The night before I walk up the gangway, I remember it very clearly, I smoked 3 packs of Marlboro Reds, drank like 7 or 8 beers, turned up with a hangover, but that was it. I just knew I had to go all in. I had to walk away from every vice in one fell swoop if I wanted to allow a new story to unfold. And there was something kind of symbolic about leaving my old, disgusting life on land and sailing away to a new life and a new continent. So I'm running around post-war Liberia. Charles Taylor had just left. 14 years had ruined the country. I'm taking pictures of bullets that riddled everything, apartment buildings that were 1,000 people living in a building with no glass, houses that were once beautiful. And the advance team had flyered the country before we came in. And this is what we were doing. We were looking for people with giant facial tumors, with flesh-eating disease. People who had been born with cleft lips and cleft palates, who had been burned during the war. Often the rebels would pour hot oil on people's faces, trying to disfigure them. Third day on the mission, I know that we have 1,500 available surgery slots to fill. I get up at 5 in the morning, I put on hospital scrubs, I grab my Nikons, and I start heading towards the football stadium that the government has given us to screen patients. Turn the corner, and there are over 5,000 people standing outside waiting to be triaged. And this was a moment for me. I remember weeping, realizing over 3,000 people were going to be sent home without hope. I later learned many of them had walked for more than a month with their children, just in the hope of seeing a doctor. First child I photographed was this little boy named Alfred. 14-year-old boy suffocating to death on his face with a benign tumor. It's called an amelioblastoma. And I would see so much worse than this. He was the first patient, he was really my first friend in Africa, and I watched an amazing doctor a couple days later operate on Alfred. This was his mom, no, this was before. His mom pulled out a photo and said, this was my son at 10 years old. But there was one doctor for every 50,000 people in the country. So they took him to witch doctors who cut him and spread pastes on him and the blood of chickens, and the tumor just grew and grew and grew and grew. And then he came to us, and an amazing surgeon from the UK who could have been in the Maldives or the Caribbean, but instead had come to West Africa, operated on him, and a couple weeks later I got to take him home with his new face, and I got to watch him heal. So this was my job. The first year I take 50,000 photographs. I'm documenting every single patient before and after. I'm getting to know their stories, and I'm blasting my club list with these photos. So you can imagine the list gets a little smaller, okay? Email open rates were like 100% back then, okay? So people are like, I signed up for that cool Chanel party you did, but not the tumor leprosy party. Most people, though, began to give money to the organization and began to volunteer, saying, I had no idea that this organization existed, that people were suffering like this, that I could sponsor a surgery. give someone their sight back, or remove a tumor, or repair a cleft lip on a 64-year-old woman for $250. So I signed up for a second tour because I didn't know what was next. And on the second tour, I went into the villages and I realized that dirty water was making some of these people sick. And I learned 50% of the country was drinking from disgusting swamps and ponds and rivers. You saw the Flint water. Imagine drinking from a brown or green viscous swamp. 50% of the country didn't have clean water to drink. I met this 13-year-old girl named Howard. I'd actually never seen a human being drink dirty water before. I sold water in nightclubs for $10 to people who wouldn't even open them. They would drink champagne instead. And I realized Howard had never had anything else. This is the water she used her entire life to wash, to bathe, to drink, to cook with. So I started showing the doctors my images from in the rural areas, and they confirm at the time the statistic from the World Health Organization, 52% of disease throughout the developing world, water and sanitation related. So I remember the chief medical officer said, you really want to be a doctor, you care about people being well, go solve one of the biggest global problems in the world. Go give everyone on the planet clean water. And I'm like, all right, I will. So I came back to New York City 2 years later at 30, completely broke because I'd given all of my money to mercy ships and the people I met along the way. But I'm like, I'm going to bring clean water to everybody on earth. Haven't done it yet. But here's where we're at. 663 million people today. 1 out of every 11 people on the planet is drinking dirty water. The thing that we take for granted. And it looks like this. Kids like John Bosco in southern Rwanda, drinking water we wouldn't let our animals drink. This is all he has ever known. This little girl I met in Honduras drinking what looked more like chocolate milk that came from her river in front of her house. I started learning, much like Dr. Mono, all the different diseases associated with water. I'd never heard of schistosoma before. I learned it was a fancy word for parasites or worms that infected over 100 million people. Cholera, which could kill you in a couple days. Trachoma, which you could go blind from. I learned that 1 out of every 3 schools on the planet didn't have clean water or a toilet. And the huge problem this is for teenage girls. Imagine sending your girl to a school with no clean water and no toilet. So many of the girls would stay home 4 or 5 days every month, fall behind in their studies. There's already enormous social pressure against girls to get educated in so many of these countries. And we would watch them just walk in the hot sun with 40 pounds of dirty water on their back, arching and then finally bending their spines over time. I learned that this was exclusively a women's issue. I have now been to 69 countries around the world. I've been to Ethiopia 30 times. I have seen a lot. I've never seen men get water. Whether I'm in Bangladesh or India or sub-Saharan Africa or Central and South America, culturally it is the role of the women and the girls to go get the water. And we see women in the most undignified situations, digging like animals in the sand, trying to find water in this riverbed. This woman told me the other option, which I walked to about 10 minutes, was this river, but she was afraid of crocodile attacks. And when I turned up at this river, the women here, through translators, said, oh yeah, they started naming people who came here and were dragged off by crocodiles, never seen again. So it was a huge, huge problem. And 12 years ago when I started, nobody was talking about it. None of my friends, they would look at me like I had 6 heads when I would try and talk to them about the global water crisis or people who were drinking dirty water. The great thing about this issue is it's a completely solvable problem. There's not a single human being alive on the planet that we do not know how to help right now. No one. We don't scratch our head and, oh, well, we couldn't help like that remote village in India or Malawi. This is not true. We know how to solve this problem in its entirety. Haven't created the will and the awareness to do so. But we've taken a solution agnostic approach to the organization. A lot of different things work in a lot of different contexts. There's no silver bullet. But you can dig wells, drill wells, build rainwater harvesting systems, biosand filters, UV, carbon, UF, a lot of different technologies. It's often as simple as drilling a well for about $10,000. And let me tell you guys, there is a terrible irony when you go into a village and you know people have been dying from the disgusting water and they're living on top of the clean water that could have saved their lives. What they don't have access to is $1 million of drilling equipment. Rigs, compressors, trucks, local skilled hydrogeologists who know how to find the water. But when you could tap into that, it's one of the most amazing things to be there for that celebration when the clean water shoots out of the ground. And thousands of people often gather around the rig, and the children crash the drilling rig, splashing and dancing. Sometimes these parties will last for days as people celebrate the coming of the water. If we had a slogan at the organization, it would be, water changes everything. Water impacts health. It impacts education. If kids have clean water and toilets at their schools, if they have clean water at home, they get better grades. They spend more time in school. We'll go into areas where previously the girls' attendance was at 30%. We'll see it rise to almost 50%. Gives time back to women. 40 billion hours are wasted by women every year just fetching water that's not even clean. So when women get 6 or 7 hours back in their day, and it's not 5 days a week, it's 7 days a week, we hear these amazing stories of entrepreneurship, of women selling rice at the market, selling peanuts at the market. I was in Zimbabwe and Zambia recently with women selling rugs for $4. Some women tell us they're better mothers. They spend more time at home with their children, leading their families forward. What I think I love most about the issue, and especially now, even more than when I started, is that it's one of the very few things everybody can agree on. Right? Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, whether you're a Christian or a Jew or an atheist or a Muslim or a Mormon, everyone can come together and stand for clean water. I make over 100 speeches a year. I never come off a stage and have someone tell me to stop it. Scott, let them die of bad water. Let the kid drink from the swamp. Let the women walk 8 hours and waste. Right? No one. Everyone can stand for clean water. It's also a binary outcome. Water is clean or it's dirty. You can test it. You know you have made a transformational difference in someone's life if you can take a child from dirty water to clean water. If you could take a town from dirty water to clean water, or a village, or a whole country. So I started the org 12 years ago. If I take you back to that moment, it was a startup story. I came back from Mercy Ships. I was living on a closet floor. I was $30,000 in debt because I found out my club partner had not paid our tax bill or dissolved our company. But he said, hey, you can crash on my closet floor and this can be your office. I'm like, great, I'll take it. Free rent in Soho, New York. It was worth something. So I was running around telling everybody I'm going to bring clean water to everybody in the world. But as I talked to people, I had the advantage of being 30, coming from outside the charitable establishment. I was just talking to people who worked at MTV or Chase Bank or Gucci. Like just everyday people in New York City just trying to make a living. And I realized this is going to be really hard because people don't trust charities. Came across a USA Today poll. 42% of Americans interviewed said they don't trust charities. More recently, NYU Stern did a study of charity trust. Found 70% of Americans believe charities either waste their money or badly waste their money. Now, this shocks people because who's more generous than Americans? We have this reputation for being the most generous society in the world, but yet so many people don't trust the system. So I thought, this is the market opportunity. I don't want to go poach World Vision or Oxfam or Save the Children donors. I want to get these skeptical, cynical people who should be giving, who are depriving themselves of being generous, of being activists, and bring them back to the table. So I had a couple ideas on how we could restore some of that trust. The first was you got to deal with the money problem. Could we find a way to use 100% of every donation we would ever take from the public to directly and only fund water projects? People are like, well, you must not have gone to business school. That's a pretty dumb idea. How will you pay for the overhead? Like a salary someday. I'm like, I have no idea, but I opened up 2 separate bank accounts with a couple $100 each and made this promise. 100% of the public's money would go. We would even pay back credit card fees. Somehow I would raise the overhead separately from a small group, hopefully of visionary investors and entrepreneurs and maybe business leaders. The second idea was, well, money's not fungible now. Let's just prove what it does. Let's use technology to connect donors to the impact. Maybe we can get young people excited about giving if they could actually see where their money went. So we've started the same year as Google Earth. We started putting up every single water point on Google Earth and Google Maps. We said, we'll never fund anything unless anybody in the public can go and see it. If we have 10,000 wells or 100,000 wells, anyone here could go to Best Buy, get a GPS device, and go visit them all. We said, we're going to build the most hyper-transparent charity the world has ever seen. There will be nowhere to hide in the future. Third thing was I wanted to build an epic, imaginative, inspiring brand. Nick Kristof had written in the New York Times, he said, toothpaste is now being peddled with more sophistication than all the world's life-saving causes. I thought, this is so sad. Like, Colgate is better at marketing than charity. Doritos can spend hundreds of millions of dollars killing us and our children with bad food. And yet, sometimes the most important causes have anemic brands, shame and guilt-based marketing left over from like the Sally Struthers ads. This does not work for your students, by the way. Kids with flies on their face, slow motion, direct mail, does not work. But yet it's still out there. I thought to build a brand, you need good taste. You need to hire the best designers and get them to leave Apple. And use their design skills for good and care about the way that you present things. The most important part of the business model, we wouldn't send anybody that looked like me over to Africa or India or Asia to go drill a well. For the work to be sustainable, we believed it had to be led by the locals in each of these countries. They would be the ones getting the credit. We would not be planting the charity water flag around the world. And this worked out because so many of these organizations had vision but no funding, no money. Joe Madiath on the bottom right started his organization in Orissa, India 35 years ago. He has 300 local Indian employees. He had an annual budget of $1 million of water and sanitation, but he wanted to do so much more. So our job would be to find them, vet them, scale them up, buy them more drilling rigs, buy them more trucks, help them hire. And they would lead their communities and their countries forward. So the only idea I had to start this thing off 12 years ago was to throw myself a party in a nightclub to raise money. Feels kind of lame now, but it was my 31st birthday. I got 700 people there. I lured them with open bar. And on the way in, they had to drop $20 in a plexi container. And that night, we raised $15,000. And instead of putting it in my back pocket like I would have used to, took every penny to a refugee camp in northern Uganda where 31,638 people were living. And they were drinking from this swamp. We rehabilitated 6 wells, and then we sent the photos and the GPS and video of clean water back to the people who attended the party. And we said, you did this. Only $20 come together in a community, did this, made this happen. We launched ad campaigns that just try to get people to think a little differently about water, and we didn't always have to take ourselves so seriously. You know, imagine just removing water from the things we use every day. Imagine Kool-Aid without water. My 4-year-old would probably like this. Imagine giving your kid death in a baby bottle. Every day, playing Russian roulette with your child's life because you're forced to, like so many moms around the world. We thought if we had compelling creative, we would get donated media, and that turned out to be true. On buses, on taxi tops, TV commercials worth more than $1 million, running our PSAs. We partnered with unlikely brands like Saks Fifth Avenue. We went to them and said, you sell women $5,000 handbags, okay? We have some $5,000 water projects. We're both in New York. We should be working together. I think they'd never heard anything quite so ridiculous. They gave me their windows for a week on Fifth Avenue, Beverly Hills, Chicago. They let me build wells inside their store. Raised $700,000 for their employees. They started calling up Gucci, Chanel, Prada, Tom Ford, selling them wells. Partnered with unlikely places in finance. We became the go-to whenever an IPO faltered the night before the NASDAQ opening. So we'd get calls at 9 o'clock. And we'd go out and get $100,000 of free media in Times Square. We've done this 3 times now. Then we went to the New York Stock Exchange and said, we'll be your go-to there too. We've done this 4 times. Opening the bell, closing the bell. Just trying to raise awareness for the organization in unlikely places. Partnered with brands like American Express. They put us on their homepage for 3 months. Took out $1 million ad campaign in print, just trying to get people aware and to care about this issue. We built a digital-only organization. First charity to get 1 million Twitter followers. First charity to use Instagram. We never direct mailed because that just doesn't work. buying your physical mailing address and sending you paper and asking you for a check. It doesn't work for you guys, let alone your students. But this is how the movements of the future we believed would be built. And we looked for ways to connect and celebrate the diversity of our community and what students and universities were doing all around the world, what Elmo was doing for Charity Water, and Spider-Man, apparently. Then we stumbled upon this idea that was really an idea for kids and for students and then really for everyone, asking people to cancel their birthday party, not accept gifts, but ask for their age in dollars for Charity Water instead. And this kid in New York City, Lori, donates his 6th birthday, raises over $2,000. Max Schmidhauser, Austin, Texas, starts knocking on doors in Austin, raises $22,000. He did live in a nice neighborhood. There were some like 77s and maybe some 777s. Maggie, 16-year-old in the middle of the country. Nona Ween gave up her 89th birthday. And her mission statement's beautiful. She writes on her website, I just want to make that possible for more people. She's lived double the life expectancy because of the privilege she was born into, and she recognized that. So this movement of birthdays starts to take off around the world, raises over $60 million as people are donating their birthdays, and it just starts to grow. Goes to tech. Jack Dorsey gives up 3 birthdays. Angela Ahrens, who was the CEO of Burberry and then over at Apple, just sends out an email, raises over $100,000. Will and Jada Smith call us up and say, we want to donate our birthdays. They raise over 200 grand from their fans, actually come with us to Africa to see the impact. One of the keys to success and the keys to capturing so many young hearts and minds, so many students, is the radical transparency. This is what people want today. And it started out by just geolocating all the projects, but then it moved on to us putting trackers on our drilling rigs so people could see where they were in real time. Now our drilling rigs have Twitter accounts, so they tweet their location. As we scaled up, we went to Google and said, hey, would you give us a grant so we could put our wells online? What if we could connect wells in the most remote areas up to the cloud? So we'd know not only that they were working, but water was flowing 5 years or 7 years or even 10 years later. Google awarded us a $5 million grant. And we started working with 20 labs to develop a sensor. We open sourced the whole project. We amassed the largest data set in the history of the world, which we currently have. But we have 3,000 sensors online. We have 2,000 coming online in Nepal. So it's been an amazing growth story. From living on a closet floor, we have scaled this thing to about a $70 million a year organization now. 1 million people are responsible for that. So this is not because of me. This is not because of Charity Water's great. This is because 1 million everyday people were inspired to reject the apathy that is so easy to embrace with a paralyzing global issue like this, and said we could do something. We could donate a birthday. We could donate the windows. We could donate a TV slot. We could give $20. 1 million people now have contributed over $360 million. So it's added up to a lot. That's allowed us to help almost 10 million people now get access to clean and safe water across 26 countries. We now employ over 900 locals every day, which I've been so excited about the job creation. 300 people alone in Ethiopia working every day to lead their communities and their countries forward. Looking back, on this, thankfully this guy is gone, because as I said, you would invite him. And I really was able to walk away from all of that. I was chasing all the wrong things, and I've been blessed with a beautiful family. This is my wife, Victoria. I got to work with her. The love stories in the book. My 2 beautiful kids, Jackson, who's 4, and Emma, who was born on my birthday, and Charity Water's birthday, who's now 2. And it's an amazing job. I get to travel the world and talk about generosity and compassion and invite people to be a part of this day when everyone is going to have clean water, when 10 million is going to 25 million and 50 million, and the 663 is coming down. I love talking to students. I love talking, I guess, I would hope that we could make it look cool, to be honest. Like we could make social entrepreneurship look fun and interesting and innovative, and maybe rival the American dream where we make all the money and we go buy boats and watches and BMWs, and I would hope to make this look exciting for people. Just last week, I got a bunch of 10-year-olds, and that's a lot of fun. Private school in New York City. I am trying to show them this is a way you could live your life. You could take a huge paralyzing issue and you could go after it, and you could invite other people to be a part of this. And one day you might look back and say, oh my gosh, $1/3 of $1 billion, $1 billion, $3 billion. I mean, that's what we hope. My dream is that literally tens and tens of billions of dollars will flow through my hands. So I wanted to give away the advance in the book. This has to be pure, 100% needed to go. So I spent the last 2 years writing this all down in the hope that this would inspire future social entrepreneurs. It was a terrible process. I hated it. But then I got a book out of it, which felt really cool. And it was cool. We debuted on the New York Times list. And I mean, Michael Lewis, come on. Like, that felt really good. Because it was I just wanted to beat Stormy Daniels, if I'm really honest. We dropped books on the same week, and it was one of the most amazing personal experiences was waking up on launch day and seeing this tweet from Bill Gates to 45 million people endorsing the book. I was like, oh, did Bill Gates just tell people to go buy the book? And then Michael Bloomberg and Richard Branson and Arianna Huffington and all these amazing people endorsed it, which was just really amazing. And I think it's been an awesome project to be able to put something out there that I hope just helps people, that I hope inspires others to live a life of service, to use your time and your talent and your service or your money in the pursuit of others. Looking ahead, 9.6 million, it's a lot of people. It's now more than the population of New York City and all the boroughs. But you put it against the problem, 1/69th of the work is done. We have done 1/69th in 12 years. So I believe the best is yet to come. So I really, truly believe the best is yet to come. And we're going to keep fighting and hope that this message spreads. And maybe you guys will help us spread that. Thanks for your time.